control.
Scoop shot. Oh, yeah!
Clark, bullseye! Who's it here? Boston pulls. He knocks it down.
Caitlin Clark. Are we having fun yet?
Mitchell, three ball.
There are multiple stories colliding right now in the WNBA universe, and every single one of them points toward the same uncomfortable conclusion about how this league treats its most important player. We need to get into all of it, because taken individually, each story is significant. Taken together, they form a picture that is genuinely alarming for anyone who cares about where this league is headed. Let us start with the good news, because there is some, and it deserves acknowledgement before we get into everything surrounding it that is deeply troubling. Caitlin Clark made the WNBA All-Star team as a starter. So did Aaliyah Boston and Kelsey Mitchell. Clark earned that selection. She has been playing at an elite level despite operating in an environment that has been, by any honest assessment, far less supportive than her talent deserves. The All-Star selection is a recognition of what she has produced on the court, and it is warranted without qualification. But surrounding that legitimate recognition is a voting controversy that the league needs to answer for directly and transparently, because the numbers being reported do not add up in any way that makes intuitive sense. Here is what the data shows. In the most recent public snapshot of fan voting tallies, Paige Bueckers gained approximately 400,000 votes over a 3-day period. 400,000 votes in 3 days. In that same window, she jumped from 5th place in the guard voting to 1st place, surpassing Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston, both of whom had been leading the balloting in previous publicly available results. Let us examine that claim against everything we know about fan engagement, media coverage, and commercial visibility in this league right now. Paige Bueckers is a talented player. Nobody is disputing her ability or her legitimacy as a professional. But the honest question that every observer of this league must be willing to ask is whether Paige Bueckers commands a fan voting base capable of generating 400,000 votes in 72 hours, specifically at a moment when the published standings show her in 5th place, with a significant deficit behind the player who is the most commercially visible and fan-engaged figure in women's professional basketball. The answer, based on any reasonable analysis of where the fan interest and the media attention in this league actually lives, is no. It strains credibility to the point of breaking it. Caitlin Clark fills arenas. Caitlin Clark sells merchandise at a volume that transforms franchise revenue models. Caitlin Clark generates television ratings that the league has never seen before her arrival. The fan base that has shown up for Clark is enormous, deeply engaged, and demonstrably willing to invest time, money, and energy into supporting her. The idea that this fan base, which has been documented purchasing jerseys, buying tickets, booking hotels in Indianapolis, spending money at local restaurants near game venues, and doing all the things that a genuinely invested audience does, suddenly fell so far behind in a 3-day window that a player starting from 5th place surged past Clark by 400,000 votes is not plausible. It is not plausible. And saying it is not plausible is not an accusation. It is a reasonable analytical response to data that does not align with observable reality. The league owes a transparent and detailed explanation of the voting mechanics that produce this outcome. It owes the fans who participated in that voting an accounting of how the process works, who audits it, and what safeguards exist to ensure that the results reflect actual fan engagement rather than any other mechanism. If the numbers are legitimate, that explanation should be straightforward and verifiable. If that explanation is not forthcoming, the questions surrounding this outcome will not fade. They will intensify. Now let us address what the WNBA players themselves voted when it came to ranking their peers, because this development is separate from the fan voting controversy, but equally revealing. Players voted Caitlin Clark as the 11th best guard in the entire league. 11th. This is the player who is currently averaging 20 points and 8 assists per game for the season. Let that statistic sit in its proper historical context for a moment. There has not been a single player in the history of this league who averaged 20 points and 8 assists for a sustained 30-day stretch. Not one. In the history of the WNBA. And Clark is not doing it for 30 days. She is doing it for the season. for the entire season, while dealing with a re-aggravated back injury, while operating in a coaching environment that has generated sustained public concern about whether her talents are being maximized or undermined, while being the target of physical conduct that required disciplinary action and generated national and international news coverage. She is doing all of that and posting historically unprecedented numbers, and her peers voted her the 11th best guard in the league. This is not a close call where reasonable people can disagree about the relative merits of different players. Kelsey Plum, who was voted 12th in that same player ranking, is averaging nearly 25 points per game. The two players with the most objectively dominant statistical profiles in the league are sitting at 11 and 12 in the player vote. That is not a reflection of honest competitive assessment. That is a reflection of something else entirely. And the word for it is not complicated. It is resentment. It is jealousy. It is the same culture of resistance toward Clark that has been documented, analyzed, and called out by observers inside and outside this league since before she played her first professional minute. The players who ranked Clark 11th are not making a case based on performance. They are making a statement based on feelings, and those feelings have been visible in this league's culture for 2 seasons now. Now let us turn to Stephanie White and what she said publicly, because this is where the commercial and institutional stakes of everything happening right now become impossible to ignore. White used her media platform to make comments that, as they have been characterized and reported, effectively communicated that certain categories of fans, specifically fans who identify as conservative or as Christians, are not welcome as part of the Indiana Fever's audience going forward. Stop and absorb the full weight of that for a moment. The Indiana Fever are a business. They are a professional sports franchise that operates in a commercial marketplace. The fans who have shown up in unprecedented numbers for Indiana Fever basketball over the past 2 seasons are the people who buy the jerseys, purchase the tickets, fill the seats, drive the television ratings that justify broadcast contracts, and spend money in the Indianapolis economy because they chose to travel to watch this team play. Those fans include people of every background, every political affiliation, every religious identity, and every demographic category imaginable. Clark's appeal has always been, and demonstrably is, broad, diverse, and commercially significant, precisely because it crosses every boundary that traditionally constrains sports audience building. For a head coach to use her public platform to communicate that a specific segment of that audience is unwelcome is not a commentary on fan behavior. It is not a targeted response to documented misconduct by specific individuals. It is a sweeping characterization that, if taken at face value, represents one of the most commercially reckless public statements any representative of a professional sports franchise has made in recent memory. The commercial evidence for why this is reckless is not theoretical, it is documented. When a boycott of Indiana Fever broadcasts was organized earlier in the season in response to organizational decisions surrounding Clark, the viewership impact was real and measurable. Approximately 980,000 fewer viewers watched that broadcast compared to the previous comparable game. Nearly 1 million people. The audience proved it could exercise its leverage by simply choosing not to tune in. The threat of a sustained, organized reduction in viewership and attendance is not hypothetical. It is a demonstrated capability. And yet Stephanie White chose to publicly alienate a significant portion of that audience. This is a firing offense in the context of a business that depends on fan revenue and fan engagement for its commercial survival. Not because of the political content of the characterization, but because the fundamental responsibility of anyone representing a consumer-facing business is to not publicly tell paying customers that they are not welcome. That is the baseline standard of commercial responsibility that any head coach in any sport at any level of professional competition should understand without needing to be told. The Indiana Fever have also suspended media access at a particularly sensitive moment. Practice and media availability were closed off without a clear and satisfying explanation at a time when the fan base and the broader media community have urgent and legitimate questions about Clark's health, her availability for upcoming games, and the organizational direction of the franchise. The opacity surrounding Clark's status, the day-to-day injury management that has already frustrated fans through an extended period of uncertainty, continues to generate questions that are not being answered. Is Clark practicing with the team? Is she available for Sunday's game? What is the actual timeline for her return to full participation? These are not intrusive questions. They are the basic informational needs of a fan base that has invested significant emotional and financial commitment in this franchise and deserves transparency from the organization it supports. The league and the Indiana Fever organization are managing a situation where multiple serious institutional failures are happening simultaneously and in full public view. A fan voting process that produced results requiring transparent explanation. A player ranking by peers that reflects resentment rather than honest competitive assessment. A head coach who publicly alienated paying customers. A media blackout at a moment requiring transparency. A star player whose injury status and availability remain unclear to the audience that showed up specifically for her. Every one of these situations, individually, represents an institutional failure. Together, they represent something that the WNBA cannot afford at this stage of its development. This league is in the middle of a moment it spent decades trying to manufacture. The commercial momentum, the mainstream visibility, the cultural conversation, all of it arrived because Caitlin Clark stepped onto a professional court. Every institutional decision that undermines her, marginalizes her fan base, obscures her status, or treats her commercial impact with the kind of casual disregard that the player vote and the coaching comments both reflect, is a decision being made against the league's own interests. The All-Star selection is deserved, but what surrounds it tells the real story. And the real story is an institution that still has not fully decided to protect and maximize the greatest commercial opportunity it has ever been handed. That decision cannot be deferred indefinitely. The window is not permanent, and right now the decisions being made are moving in the wrong direction.